Hi, good afternoon. Today I would like to talk about an argument against free trade given by a German economist called Friedrich List, who lived between 1789 and 1846. So, in the last video, I talked about how a British economist called David Ricardo had proposed that the countries should trade and the trade should be a free trade so that both the countries who are involved in the trade gain. Both the countries would generate wealth for themselves, both the countries would benefit by the trade. But there were some critics, there were some economists who had reservations against this line of thought. And one such economist was the German economist Friedrich List. According to him, a free trade did not work all the time. For example, what he meant by that was if there was a developing country and if there are some domestic industries in the country and if they produce some goods catering to the demand of that country, if cheap foreign goods came into the country, then the domestic industries would not stand a chance against these cheap foreign goods because the domestic industries have not had the time to get the expertise that other developed country had got to develop its own industries and make cheap products in large amounts. Frederick List's argument was, uh, let us say there is a developed country. That country had some time make to perfect its or master its line of product, and because of that the industries in that country have been able to successfully produce large number of goods cheaply, and the price of those goods would be cheap, and the people within any country, not only within the developed country, would prefer to buy those goods because they are cheap. The labor of such industries in the developed country would also have found ways to efficiently produce the goods, reduce the time, increase large number, produce large number of goods and cheaply, and also with great expertise and also good quality goods. For all these characters in the goods produced by the developed countries needed some time to master their line of product or their products, to master producing their products. And similarly, a developing country which has probably become independent after colonization would also require some time. The industries in the developing country would also require some time to master their line of products, to be able to produce goods efficiently, to be able to produce large number of goods cheaply. All this requires time. And what Frederick List said was, if according to free trade, if the goods of the developed country enter that of a developing or an underdeveloped country, the goods of the developed country would be so cheap that the customers in the underdeveloped or a developing country would prefer those cheap goods over and above the goods produced by no over over the goods produced by the domestic industries. And this way the domestic industries would be wiped out, and these domestic industries, according to Frederick List, have to be nurtured because they are the ones who are going to generate wealth for the nation in the future, if not in the immediate short term. So, what Frederick List proposed was that to impose restrictions on the import of the cheap goods that would enter the developed or developing or the underdeveloped country from a developed country, possibly. So these restrictions, he proposed that they should be in the form of taxes or tariffs. Imposing a tax or a tariff would increase the price of the good of the developed or the foreign goods, would increase the price of the foreign goods. It would make it more expensive than the goods which are produced within the developed underdeveloped country. or the developing country. I will generally talk about just developing country instead of saying developing and underdeveloped. So the foreign goods, rather than being cheap, would become expensive once the tariffs are imposed. The goods produced by the domestic industries would also be expensive, but not as expensive than the, there is a possibility that they won't be as expensive than the ones which are imported from abroad. So this way, the people in the developing country would be attracted to buying the goods produced by the domestic industries. For some time, these domestic industries would not be wiped out, at least during the time when the tariffs are imposed on the imported goods, and they will also get some time to gain some expertise over their products. They would be in time they will be able to produce cheaper goods more efficiently and in large amounts, and also top quality goods. And these were the thoughts of the German physicist, the German economist Friedrich List. And once that happens, once the domestic industries have found ways to produce large number of goods in cheap quantities and also export them abroad, then it would be the time to remove the restrictions on imports, in this case the tariffs. The same procedure can be followed for other industries in the economy until they become competitive enough to be able to have a certain pricing that would let them gain profits abroad as well as within the nation. So this way, Friedrich List had said that free trade does not work between developing, underdeveloped, and a developed country. The the industries in the developing country have to be nurtured. They are still in their infant stages, and therefore the government has to protect these industries. So to this line of thought, there was a lot of opposition by many of the economists, and even today, most of the economists do not subscribe to the policy of protection by the government. Their line of argument was that once the government protects the domestic firms would try to stay under that protection and would not produce produce goods efficiently, would not produce good quality goods. Rather, the goods will be of low quality. They won't produce large number of goods in cheaply. This was the line of thinking of the economists. Even this is the line of thinking of the economists even today, most of them. And they also say that the domestic industries which were protected by the government through the policy of taxes could also give up their workforces, could give up their buildings and machinery and tools to some other businesses which could possibly make goods efficiently. But what protection does is it lets those badly performing firms that produce low quality goods to stay in business, and therefore the economy, large number of goods are not produced cheaply in the economy, and therefore the economy does not generate as much wealth as would be expected. And this was also seen in the beginning of the 20th century in many of the countries of Africa and Asia, where the line of thought of Friedrich List was implemented by some of these countries, and ultimately the firms in these countries have become inefficient and unprofitable. So finally, with this video, what I want to say is, today the economists believe that free trade is the way. Although protection is needed in some circumstances, it is the free trade that dominates within the thinking of economists today. In this video then, I talked about the role of the government at protecting certain industries by imposing tariffs on the imported goods, cheap imported foreign goods. In the past video, I talked about how a government can ease the restriction on the import of goods, and this was suggested by why the government should ease the restriction, and this was suggested by a British economist called David Ricardo, who lived between 1772 and 1823. In the next video, I'll be talking about more roles of the government and further give some clarity on why government is needed for an economy. So, thank you.